This is Joey. She's a transfer student from Tokyo who moved to the village because of her parents' job. Sadly, at her new school, her classmates bullied her a lot. One day, Joey noticed her shoes were gone from her locker. She quickly realized it was the bullies who had taken them. Not long after, a boy named David came up to her. Out of everyone in class, David was the only one who treated her kindly. He asked her why she was still at school so late. Not wanting to trouble anyone, Joey just said she was waiting for someone. Later, Joey went to the forest, where she found the bullies who had stolen her shoes. There were 7 of them, 3 boys, Steve, Ronnie, and Bob, and 4 girls, Julie, Jane, Annie, and their leader, Jess. But unlike the others, Jess never actually bullied Joey herself. She just stood by and watched her friends do it. The bullies threw Joey's shoes into the mud and shoved her into the mud too. They hurled stuff at her and called her names. They were doing all this because they thought Joey had stolen David away from Jess. After they finally left, Joey went home. When she got there, her little sister Rihanna cried and hugged her the moment she saw what kind of shape Joey was in. Joey's parents couldn't stand to see her like that, so they hugged her and Rihanna tightly. The following day, Joey and her dad went to talk to her homeroom teacher about the bullying. The teacher, Miss Rose, just said to Joey to keep going and not cause any trouble. She said Joey was going to graduate in a month anyway, and the school was going to close for good after that since no new students had signed up. Joey and her dad had no choice but to just go along with what the teacher said. When Joey came back to class, she saw that someone had carved "Just Die" on her desk. To make matters worse, Steve actually tripped her dad on purpose, causing him to fall down the stairs. The bullies put a goat's head in Joey's desk on purpose. Joey was too scared to sit, so she had to stand the whole class. When Joey got home, she found out that her dad hurt his back after Steve kicked him with a shoe that had a thumbtack on it. He didn't want his daughter to go through the same thing, so he decided she didn't have to go to school. He hoped to stop her from getting bullied again. After 3 days, Joey got a fever. The school found out about Joey's being sick, and the bullies didn't have anyone else to pick on, so they were bored. Rochelle, a student, was then asked to go visit Joey and had to do what they told her to. When Rochelle got to Joey's house, she asked how he was doing in a nice way. Joey was happy that one of her classmates still cared about her, but then Rochelle randomly asked to borrow a cassette from her for some reason. Then she whipped out her phone to snap a pic of Joey. Joey was totally confused and started to think about what was going on. Rochelle eventually admitted that she only showed up because the bullies made her. She told Joey to go back to school because she was afraid the bullies would pick on her if she kept skipping classes. Rochelle's worst nightmare happened. Joey didn't want to go to school, so the bullies went after her instead. She got a haircut after being trapped in a locker. She just had to let them treat her like a plaything. After a lot of nerves, she finally asked them if they wanted to be friends, so she wouldn't end up like Joey. As long as they were cool with being her friend, she was fine with taking the insults and jokes. She went so far as to come up with a sneaky plan to make them into thinking she wanted to be friends. The next day, Rochelle showed up with a gas can, planning to set Joey's house on fire. What's even more messed up is that the bullies fully supported her idea and were going to join in, but Jess decided to bail out, unlike the rest of them. Rochelle was bummed out because she really wanted Jess, who was super intimidating, to notice her. Joey and Rihanna were having a great time walking around the village. Later, they ran into David doing what he loved best, taking pictures. Joey left with David after dropping Rihanna off at her place. Before she left, Rihanna gave Joey a necklace that she made in school. Joey and David walked around the village. During the trip, the two of them exchanged stories. Meanwhile, the bully came to Joey's house and drenched the whole house with gasoline. They even soaked Joey's mother with gasoline, and Steve had the heart to burn her alive. Rihanna and her father saw that, so the bullies doused them in gasoline and caused the father and little Rihanna to burn to death.
In the hallway's cold and hollow gleam, a silent scream, a shattered dream. Books and fists, their laughter stings, a fragile heart bound by their strings.
Joey and David got back home in the evening. After seeing her house on fire, Joey's heart was filled with fear. Joey wasted no time and went straight to her house. When she got there, she saw a bunch of people standing around outside, but her family wasn't there. It seemed like they didn't make it out of the fire. She was super mad. She couldn't help feeling bad about leaving her family at home. David quickly ran into the house and came back out with Rihanna, who was thankfully still alive, even though she had suffered really bad burns all over her body. Rihanna was then taken to the nearest hospital. She got really bad burns that could have been deadly, but luckily she made it through. Right before he passed away, her dad hugged her to shield her from the fire, sacrificing himself to keep her safe. David's amazing courage also shows that he was a great friend to Joey. Joey was chilling with her grandpa, hoping that Rihanna would wake up soon. After the incident, she had to stay at her grandpa's place. The next day, the bullies seemed worried, and even Julie and Jane cried. They were more worried about getting busted by the cops than feeling bad about torching Joey's family. They were really freaking out because Steve had burns on his fingers, and that could totally point the finger at them. Steve swore he didn't mean to burn them, even though it was clear they purposely went through with their plan. Rochelle went up to Jess to tell her about what happened yesterday, hoping to make her proud. Instead of feeling proud, Jess reacted by stabbing Rochelle's hand with a pencil. Even though Rochelle was able to burn down Joey's house, she still couldn't win over Jess. In a nutshell, Jess is back home. Her dad wasn't on board with her plan to go to beauty school in Tokyo, so they had a little disagreement about it. Your dad said he's going to decide what happens to you in the future. This gave us an idea of why she bullied people at school. Maybe it's because she felt too smothered by her parents. As winter was getting closer, Joey decided to go back to school. Rumi and her friends were freaking out because if Joey found out they caused the fire that killed her family, they'd be locked up. Long story short, Julie, Jane, and Annie took Joey to the middle of the forest after school. They didn't say sorry, they owned up to setting her family on fire, after confessing to wanting to murder Joey to finally put an end to the case, since Joey and her whole family had already died. This really got to Joey. She couldn't stop thinking how they had the heart to kill her family who didn't do no wrong. Annoyed, angry, and fed up, Joey decided to kill them.
It tolls for them a reckoning, a bitter end. From ashes rise a haunting flame to carve the scars, to stake the claim.
The next day, the students couldn't stop talking about Annie, Julie, and Jane disappearing. Steve was a little freaked out and scared when he heard the news. Not long after that, the cops showed up, which scared the bullies a lot. David asked Steve why he looked so worried when he saw the cops, since they were just there to investigate their missing classmate, not to arrest anyone. Steve was so relieved when he heard that. When he left early to chill at home, he ran into Joey unexpectedly on the way. His early trip home led to a disaster. Joey used a small knife to attack Steve. Steve fell and broke his leg. Joey didn't kill him at that moment, but rather let him die slowly. She left him lying with a broken leg and blood profusely gushed out of his body. This made Steve suffer every second. The heavy snowfall in winter then caused him to die slowly. Joey didn't show up to school for a few days after Steve died, so David got concerned and went to check on her. Joey's grandpa said that Joey likes to sleep a lot, even though she's perfectly healthy. Also, her grandpa said he would bring Joey and Rihanna back to live in Tokyo. After finding out, David was bummed because he wouldn't get to see Joey's amazing face anymore. By the way, Rochelle was hanging out with her mom. Shortly after that, she got a call from Ronnie, who was hanging out with Bob. On the phone, Ronnie said that Steve had vanished and he thought they might have been killed. He also had a feeling that Joey was the one behind all of this. Then he told Rochelle to go check and see if he was mistaken while he intended to kill Joey. The next day, Joey took off from her grandpa's place, while Ronnie and Bob kept an eye on her from afar. Ronnie tried to shoot her with his crossbow, but he totally missed. Joey figured out that she was being chased, so she ran into the woods and made Ronnie and Bob go separate ways to find her. Bob eventually caught her, but then Joey grabbed some pliers and pinched Bob's nose until it started bleeding. Ronnie tried to shoot his arrow again, but ended up headshotting Bob. Joey then cut open Ronnie's belly and stabbed him to death. She couldn't accept that the murderers of her family were still alive, so she intended to slaughter them all. The next day, David went to see Joey again, and this time, Joey was excited to meet him. They went for a walk and eventually got to a place. David wanted to make sure Joey had left. He told her he'd be really lonely if she left, but Joey didn't reply to him. She didn't say anything and just bit her lip so hard it bled. She didn't care about friendships or even romance anymore. David got it even without the answer. He said he'd take care of her, even if it meant being by her side, and he seemed genuine. After getting back home with David, Joey went to visit Rihanna. Sadly, Joey was getting really worried because her sister's condition hadn't gotten any better and she was in a lot of pain. At the same time, David was having a chat with his grandma. He was living with her alone because someone killed his parents. He told his grandma he's going to keep studying while working in Tokyo because he wants to be with Joey even though Joey doesn't care about anyone anymore. That night, Rochelle went searching for the bullies and was horrified to find Julie, Annie, and Jane's bodies buried in the snow. Right then, she tried to call Jess, but Jess didn't really want to answer the phone. She was grossed out by Rochelle, even though Rochelle had done some wild stuff for her. Rochelle figured out that all her friends had died one by one, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the killer came for her too. Even when she was at home with her mother, she was so scared that she even threatened her own mother. The next day, Rochelle gave Jess another call. Fed up with the calls, Jess finally picked up. Rochelle wasted no time in telling her about what happened last night. She found our 3 friends' dead bodies. Rochelle was really scared and asked for help, but Jess didn't seem to care about her or their friends who had died. She figured it was all their fault, and she didn't want to be part of it. She got all worked up because Rochelle tried to drag her into it. Rochelle was really upset to hear that. Later on, Jess went to meet up with Joey. They both met up at a bus stop. When Jess saw Joey, she quickly gave back the cassette that Rochelle had borrowed and mentioned that she had been taking good care of it. They didn't act like typical enemies. They actually checked up on each other. They were actually really good friends at one time. Joey always used to go on about Tokyo to Jess, and it made her really want to live there one day. As time passed, a new kid named David came to the school and instantly hit it off with Joey. He became really close to her, and they were always hanging out together, which caused some tension between Joey and Jess. Jess was not okay with this, so she basically let Joey's classmate make fun of him, thinking that it would make Joey want to reach out to her and be friends again. The problem wasn't that Joey was taking David away from Jess. It was more that Jess was getting jealous because Joey spent more time with David. Jess never joined her friends in bullying Joey because she still thought of Joey as a friend, but before she knew it, things went totally wrong. Jess apologized to her because she knew she was the one who caused everything.
They rage like fire, bright but blind, but I am water, I'm undefined. Their chaos falters and I remain, the gentle strength through all this pain. I speak in whispers the world can't hear, a language woven from pain and fear. Though they call me broken, I am whole, a silent hymn within my soul.
Later, amid Jess's trip back home, Rochelle tried to stab her from behind. Jess managed to steer clear of it. Rochelle did that because Jess hurt her feelings by never appreciating all the things she did for him, and then had the audacity to go meet up with Joey instead. Seeing that Rochelle had fixed to kill her, Jess didn't have any choice but to fight her. Their fight was bloody. Rochelle managed to land a critical hit and Jess was down. She ran from there, leaving Jess dying in the snow. At the same time, Joey received a phone call from David. When David found out that Joey was getting ready to go to Tokyo, he made a strong plea for her to stay with him, saying that he was also planning to move to Tokyo. Joey felt awkward, so she turned him down and hung up the phone. David was really bummed out about getting turned down. After the call, David lost his cool and there was blood all over his hand. David then went up to his poor old grandma, who was all bloody and defenseless, showing that he had hurt her badly, and that's why his hand was all bloody. The reason was that his grandma didn't let him go to Tokyo for some big reasons. His grandma said he was too young to work in the city and didn't have anyone else to take care of him. Even though grandma was in the worst shape she had ever been, she still found a moment to give David some good advice because she didn't want to lose her family again. After that, David confessed that he was the one who killed his parents. He said he really couldn't stand his dad when he was drunk and abusing his mom, so he ended up taking matters into his own hands and got rid of him. David killed his dad, and then he felt bad for his mom, so he killed her too to make sure she could be at peace. His grandma shed a few tears when he told her the truth. David's terrible actions, like killing his parents and torturing his grandmother, were a result of the pain he felt from watching his father abuse his mother for many years, which caused him to have mental health problems. In the end, his grandma passed away. The next day, all the parents who had lost their kids flocked to the school. The parents pointed fingers at the school and at Rose, their kid's homeroom teacher. But Rose didn't give a damn about whoever was causing all this. It was also found out that Rose got bullied by her classmates when she was still in school. The parents constantly pressuring her brought back those memories of being bullied. She totally freaked out and bolted from the scene, but she fell on the street right in front of a snowplow car, got crushed into pieces, and died in a horrible bloody accident. On the other hand, Joey was about to visit Rihanna, and at the same time, Rochelle was seen in the hospital and had covered Rihanna with gasoline, intending to set her on fire. Luckily, Joey arrived on time and stopped her. David came to see Joey later. David said her grandpa told him where she was. Not long after that, a nurse came up to Joey and said that her grandpa was really hurt. This made her anxious because her family was going through a tough time once again. She suddenly realized that David might be the one who tried to kill her grandfather. Considering his words, he might be the last one with her grandfather. Joey chased after David as he was about to go and made him show his hand. She noticed a bunch of scars on his hand, which confirmed that he was the one who attacked her grandpa. He finally spilled the beans and admitted he did it so they could live together. Just the two of them, showing that his crazy infatuation with Joey was out of control. Rochelle showed up and blamed Joey for everything, saying it was his fault for not going back to school and making the whole class bully her. Then she went on to say how she took out Joey's parents, how they were screaming, and how Rihanna was crying, begging for forgiveness. As Joey's family suffered, Rochelle and the bullies were laughing, which made Joey feel a whirlwind of emotions: anger, devastation, and sadness. And then she just went for it without thinking and ended up getting stabbed. David found out Rochelle was the one who set fire to Joey's family's house, so he took it upon himself to prove his love for Joey by dealing with the situation himself. After David brutally killed Rochelle, he smiled at Joey and hoped she would be impressed by him. But then Joey found a photo in David's bag that made her scream. It turns out that when the house was on fire, David didn't actually go in to help Rihanna. He was trying to take a picture of the burning bodies of Joey's family, but then he heard Rihanna's cries and had to save her. He was hoping Joey would fall in love with him. David wanted to explain the photo to Joey, but Joey just ignored him and pulled out the knife from her stomach. David got really mad because Joey wouldn't give him a chance, so he started attacking her. Then he told Joey to look at the camera and give a big smile. He totally freaked out like a crazy person. Just as he was about to snap the pic, Joey stumbled upon Ronnie's crossbow and shot it straight through the camera lens, stabbing David in the eye and killing him instantly. After all that happened, Joey tried to walk to meet Rihanna, but the blood continued to gush out of her body and her strength had gone completely. To make a long story short, there was a farewell ceremony at school and, surprisingly, Jess was rescued from that evening. She was hell-bent on going to Tokyo to make her dream come true, but Joey had to pass away because she didn't have the strength to pull through, leaving poor Rihanna all by herself. The film opened with a look at the bustling metropolis of Seoul, a city of endless activity where people were often too busy or self-absorbed to notice the suffering around them. This modern-day apathy was embodied by a woman named Hae-won, a bank employee who lived and breathed indifference. One night while driving home, she caught a disturbing sight of a woman on the side of the road who was being viciously assaulted by two men. Instead of helping, Hae-won deliberately looked away, choosing to pretend she saw nothing. The victim, seeing an opportunity for escape, ran to Hae-won's car, frantically banging on the window and pleading for help. Hae-won, in a callous act of self-preservation, rolled up her window, sealing the woman's fate. The men dragged the victim away and continued their brutal assault, leaving her to die that same night. The next day, Hae-won's cold demeanor was on full display at the bank. An older woman came to her desk, tearfully begging for a loan. Hae-won refused her face a mask of stone. The more the woman begged, the harsher Hae-won's words became. The commotion drew the attention of everyone in the bank, but Hae-won didn't care. She coldly told the woman to go home, as she was about to take her lunch break. During her break, Hae-won headed to the police station, having been called to give her statement as a witness to the previous night's crime. The officers showed her pictures of the men, but Hae-won lied, claiming she couldn't see their faces clearly. Her testimony freed the men for the time being. As Hae-won was leaving, the victim's father, a man crushed by grief, begged her to tell the truth. But Hae-won, fueled by a toxic mix of apathy and fear, walked away without a word. Just as she got outside, the two men she had just saved from prison cornered her and threatened her, telling her to never look at them again. Hae-won returned to the bank, her heart now even colder than before. Hae-won found out that her colleague, a kind-hearted woman, had approved the loan for the woman she had so callously refused. Hae-won was furious and accused her colleague of trying to show off to the manager. Her colleague calmly denied the accusation, telling Hae-won that she did it because it was the right thing to do. She reminded Hae-won that the bank was built on helping people. Hae-won, still in a rage, went to the restroom to cool off. After a few moments, she decided to apologize to her colleague and invite her to dinner via chat. She then reached for the door, but it wouldn't open. She kicked and shoved the door until it opened, sending her sprawling on the ground. She got up and went straight to her colleague, who was sitting at her desk, and slapped her across the face. She accused her of locking her in the bathroom. The two had a verbal altercation, but it was quickly resolved when she saw a cleaning lady with the same sandals her colleague was wearing. Hae-won stood there, ashamed and embarrassed. Her manager saw the scene and ordered her to take a vacation to clear her head. Hae-won arrived home to find a postal worker waiting with a thick stack of mail, mostly letters from a childhood friend who lived on a remote island. She had never bothered to open them, simply tossing them in the trash as soon as they arrived. But for some reason, this time she hesitated. A pang of something resembling curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need for an escape from her suffocating life and soul, made her change her mind. She decided to go to her friend's island, a place called Modo. She arranged for a boat captain, a man named Sung, to take her there. As they set off, Sung made a little small talk, wondering aloud why a beautiful, well-dressed city girl like Hae-won would ever want to visit such an isolated backwater place. Hae-won, ever guarded, simply said she was nostalgic for her grandfather's old home. As they pulled up to the rustic pier, a single woman was waiting. It was her childhood friend, Boknam. Boknam's face lit up as if she had just seen a ghost. With an explosive joy that seemed to bubble over, she ran toward Hae-won and hugged her tightly, her eyes filled with a desperate, unspoken plea for a lifeline. Boknam's happiness was so palpable, it was almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to Hae-won's apathetic demeanor. Boknam immediately introduced Hae-won to the other villagers, all of whom stared in awe at her perfectly made-up face and flawless city skin. The admiration, however, was broken by an old woman with a perpetually sour look on her face, Boknam's aunt-in-law, Dong-ho. Dong-ho sneered, demanding to know why Hae-won would come to a godforsaken place with nothing to offer. Boknam quickly pulled her friend away from the bitter woman and insisted on carrying Hae-won's bags for her, her kindness unwavering despite the public humiliation. Boknam had even gone to the trouble of preparing Hae-won's old house. When Hae-won asked why it was so clean, Boknam beamed, explaining that she had spent the last 3 days tirelessly cleaning it herself. Hae-won, unaccustomed to such a selfless act, was genuinely touched. The kindness continued as Boknam's daughter, Yeon-hee, a shy girl who was terrified of strangers, showed up. Boknam explained that her husband and his brother wouldn't let Yeon-hee go to school, claiming that education was useless for girls. Later, as Hae-won was getting ready for bed, Boknam brought her a pillow to ensure she was comfortable. As night fell, the narrative shifted, giving a glimpse into the dark reality of Boknam's life. She was eating dinner with her husband, Man-jong, his brother, Chul-jong, and Yeon-hee. Man-jong, a domineering figure with a cruel streak, casually announced that he was going fishing. Boknam, exhausted and worn down, calmly replied that it was pointless, as he never brought anything back. Her honest remark sparked a sudden, violent rage in her husband, and she immediately cowered, apologizing for her audacity. It was a terrifying display of his power over her. Later, after Man-jong and Yeon-hee had left, Chul-jong came back and, in a horrifying turn of events, brutally assaulted his sister-in-law. Boknam didn't fight back. She was a woman without a single ounce of power or person to turn to. She had no doubt that her husband would believe his brother over her. Her silence was a chilling testament to her desperation. Long story short, Man-jong returned home with his hands empty, as usual. He immediately noticed the evidence of his brother's earlier transgression, but instead of being angry at his brother, his rage turned to his wife. He began to kick her, yelling at her for daring to speak her mind. He was furious that she didn't show him the proper respect as the head of the household, even though her comments were just the normal complaints of a woman who was tired of being a good-for-nothing wife. The next morning, Chul-jong joined them for breakfast, and Boknam ate her meal on the floor like a servant. The three of them then went to a neighboring farm to help with the work. Boknam was put to work mixing cement and was completely exhausted. To make matters worse, the owner of the farm brought out refreshments for the men, but ignored Boknam. She just kept working, her patience seemingly boundless. That same day, Man-jong and Chul-jong's lust for women led them to hire a sex worker from the city. They would often do this, and Boknam would have to endure the humiliation of their infidelities. Meanwhile, Hae-won, enjoying the beautiful scenery and a much-needed break from her stressful life, was strolling along the beach when Chul-jong approached her. He had been eyeing her ever since she arrived, and his lust for her was at an all-time high. He tried to assault her, but thankfully his niece Yeon-hee appeared out of nowhere and called his name. Chul-jong was angry that he didn't get what he wanted, and he left. Yeon-hee introduced herself and showed Haewon a book, a precious gift from her mother so she could at least learn how to read. The two then spent the day together playing. When Haewon and Yeon-hee returned to the house, Haewon heard the sounds of the prostitute and Man-jong from inside. Bok-nam was sitting outside eating a huge bowl of rice. Instead of asking what was going on, Haewon chose to ignore the sounds of her friend's humiliation, not wanting to get involved. On the other hand, Bok-nam just asked Haewon to take Yeon-hee and play again. Dong-ho soon showed up with a basket of vegetables, and her eyes were drawn to Bok-nam as she voraciously ate her meal. She told Bok-nam that she had no shame, eating her meal with such gusto while her husband was inside with another woman. Bok-nam just kept eating, her face a mask of stone. She knew that arguing would only lead to a beating. The food was her only solace. After she had finished with Man-jong, the prostitute was sitting outside, putting on her makeup. She looked at Bok-nam and, with a heavy heart, apologized to her. She told Bok-nam that her boss had forced her to come here. Bok-nam looked at her and told her that she was too pretty to be a sex worker. Jaemin was so moved by her words that she gave Bok-nam some of her expensive lotion and her phone number, telling her to call her if she ever needed anything. In the sweltering afternoon sun, Bok-nam painstakingly harvested honey from a beehive, while her husband, Man-jong, lounged nearby smoking. He broke the silence by lazily asking if she had prepared his food. Bok-nam, still seething from his cruelty, simply ignored him and went about her work. His temper flared, and he threw a stone at the beehive, sending it tumbling. A swarm of bees immediately came for Bok-nam, and she ran for her life. Covered in stings, Bok-nam found a fan and tried to find some relief. Man-jong, in a drunken stupor, simply lay there. As if her agony wasn't enough, he demanded that she go back and get the rest of the honey. When she asked for some time to let her swelling go down, he threw something at her, and she fell to the ground. He then gave her a small jar of peanut butter, a useless remedy that only served as a final act of humiliation. Later, Bok-nam walked by Haewon's house and saw her doing yoga. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace. She joined Haewon, mirroring her movements until they were both lying on the floor. In that quiet moment, with a friend by her side, Bok-nam felt a glimmer of joy, something she had not felt in a very long time. For her, Haewon and Yeon-hee were the only people who made her life bearable. On her way home, a huge smile was on Bolnam's face. Her joy turned to horror, however, when she saw a familiar item on the laundry line, a pair of her daughter's underwear. She knew she hadn't washed them. Filled with a terrifying dread, she ran inside and found Yeon-hee putting on makeup. When Bok-nam asked her what she was doing, her daughter answered with a heartbreaking innocence, saying she just wanted her father to love her as much as he loved Bok-nam. A primal fury took over Bok-nam, and she began to scream at her daughter. The noise brought her husband there. Enraged that Bok-nam would dare scold his daughter, he threw her out of the house. Yeon-hee, now terrified, ran to her father for comfort. As Bok-nam was leaving, she saw Man-jong's hand creep up her daughter's body. The horrifying realization that her daughter was being abused by her own father filled Bok-nam with an unbridled rage. She ran and grabbed a machete, ready to kill him. But as she saw him again, he was just hugging his daughter. In that brief moment, her killer's instinct was gone. She went outside and sat down, her mind in a fog. Meanwhile, Haewon had just received an email from her manager informing her that she was fired. She tried to call her manager, but the signal was out. Left with no other choice, she began to pack her bags, deciding to return to Seoul. As Haewon was getting ready, she looked outside and saw Bok-nam sitting there, not saying a word. Haewon approached her, thanked her for all her kindness, and told her that she was leaving the next day. Bok-nam, with tears streaming down her face, poured out her deepest desires to Haewon. She told her that she felt like a prisoner on the island and begged Haewon to take her and her daughter to the city. She told Haewon that she was afraid that if she stayed on the island, her husband would continue to abuse her daughter. Haewon listened, and her face went cold. She told Bok-nam that the city was no different than the island, a subtle rejection of her desperate plea. But as Bok-nam's pleas became more desperate, a lie came to Haewon's lips. She told Bok-nam that she was lying and that a father would never do something so vile to his daughter. In that moment, Haewon, who had seen the worst of humanity, became the judge, jury, and executioner, convicting her friend of lying. Baknam's hope was completely crushed. She had been betrayed by the person she had put her last shred of hope in. Unbeknownst to them, another villager was outside, eavesdropping on their conversation. The next day, Haiwan went to the village to get some answers. As if on cue, Dong-ho and the other gossiper appeared and warned Haiwan to stay away from Baknam, calling her a liar. Haiwan, to their shock, told them that she was going to call the police and tell them everything, making them investigate the case. The women who had been so brave just a few moments ago scattered like roaches. On the other hand, never having been given money by her husband, Baknam decided to take matters into her own hands. She went into her husband's room and, to her surprise, found a massive amount of cash in his pocket. She was furious that he would hoard so much money when she had been struggling just to eat. She immediately called the sex worker, who had promised to help her if she ever needed anything. Baknam told her that she was leaving the island with her daughter and asked her to find a boat to take her to the city. The next morning, Baknam and Yeon-hee began their long walk to the pier, hoping to get a head start before Manjong woke up. As they were walking, Yeon-hee stopped and told her mother that she couldn't leave her father. She then began to cry, telling Baknam that she didn't want to see her get beaten anymore. Baknam was moved by her daughter's words, but she insisted that they had to leave. They got to the pier, and a boat captain, none other than Sung, was there waiting for them. The sex worker was also there waving at them. But as soon as Baknam saw the captain, a wave of despair washed over her. She knew she was a dead woman walking. Jaemin apologized, telling her that Sung was the only captain available. As Sung began to slowly and deliberately count the money, Manjong appeared, ready to drag Baknam back. Baknam and the sex worker begged Sung to leave, but he just kept counting. Manjong grabbed Baknam by the hair and began to beat her mercilessly. Not a single person in the village did anything to stop him. Dong-ho, the mean aunt, even told him to break Baknam's legs so she would never be able to run again. Baknam's daughter was begging her father to stop, but he wouldn't. Baknam just laid there, getting beaten. All her hope was gone. While Baknam was being beaten, the sex worker ran to Chuljong, begging for help, but he instead took her to a remote part of the forest and brutally sexually assaulted her. Meanwhile, Baknam's daughter, Yeon-hee, watched in horror as her father mercilessly beat her mother. She screamed at him to stop, but he responded by slapping her across the face with such force. She once again fought back by biting her father, but Manjong threw her until she stumbled backward and hit her head on a rock. She was dead. Baknam's world stopped. She had endured so much for her daughter, the one person who kept her going. She ran to her daughter, holding her in her arms, trying to get her to wake up, but it was no use. She was gone.
There's a shadow in the schoolyard's light, a figure moves where wrong feels right. Words are arrows sharp and slide on the quiet under sky. Oh, they scream like storms that rage, but I am calm, an unwritten page. Their voices fade, I hear the ground, a softer world where I am found. I speak in whispers the world can't hear, a language woven from pain and fear. Though they call me broken, I am whole, a silent hymn within my soul.
The other villagers, who had just watched Manjong beat his wife, now turned on Baknam, blaming her for her daughter's death. A few hours later, a police officer arrived on the island. He looked at Yeon-hee's body and listened to the villagers' testimony. Dong-ho and the other villagers, in a choreographed performance of lies, told the police officer that Yeon-hee had just slipped and fallen. When the officer asked Baknam what happened, she told him the truth, a desperate cry for justice. She told him that her husband had murdered her daughter. Manjong broke down in tears, pretending to be heartbroken, and told the police officer that Baknam was crazy and that she often said things that made no sense. The other villagers backed him up, telling the officer that Baknam had been nothing but a burden to her family. The officer took a moment to think and then made a decision that would forever crush Baknam's hope. He decided that the death of Yeon-hee was just a tragic accident and that Baknam was the real cause of the trouble. He told Manjong that he was going to leave Baknam with him so he could punish her for her actions. The villagers, overjoyed that their plan had worked, gave the officer baskets of food as a thank you. As he was getting ready to leave, Manjong handed him a large wad of cash a sum he had never even given his wife. This was the final nail in the coffin. Boknam looked at the officer, and she knew in her heart that she was on her own. The justice system was just as rotten as the villagers. As the officer was getting ready to leave, he saw Haiwan with her bags packed, ready to go. The villagers, however, told him to go on without her, leaving her behind. Haiwan, in a moment of frustration, told him that she was the one who had called him. The villagers looked at her in shock. It was then that the truth came out. Haiwan hadn't called the police to save Boknam. She had called them because she wanted a free ride back to the city. This was the final betrayal. In that moment, Boknam knew that there was no hope for her. The people who were supposed to help her had all betrayed her. Chul Jong, who had been lurking, saw Haiwan at her house. He grabbed some food, laced it with a powerful drug, and went to her place. He then gave them to her in hopes she would eat them. Later that night, Haiwan ate the food and immediately passed out. Chul Jong had been watching, and he went inside, ready to do what he had always wanted to do. But before he could, Boknam suddenly appeared. Despite all of Haiwan's betrayals, Boknam's affection for her childhood friend had not wavered. She pushed Chul Jong out of the way and protected Haiwan. In the next scene, it was shown the time of Haiwan and Boknam's childhood. The two young girls were playing when a group of rowdy boys, including Manjong, approached them. The boys were relentless in their taunts. They teased Boknam for her poverty and Haiwan for her urban lifestyle. The boys began to assault the girls. Haiwan ran to Boknam for protection, and Boknam fought with all her might. She was outnumbered and lost the battle. The boys beat her until she was unconscious and then sexually assaulted her. Haiwan watched in horror but did nothing to help her friend. She didn't even report the incident to the villagers. It was then that we learned the truth. Yeon-hee was not Manjong's daughter. She was the product of that horrific assault. Back to the present, after burying her daughter in a shallow grave in the yard, Boknam was approached by Dong-ho, the mean aunt. Instead of offering her condolences, she told Boknam that she was being lazy and had to go to the fields to harvest potatoes. Manjong then came outside and screamed at Boknam for burying her daughter in his yard. He and Chul Jong then left the island to sell honey in the city. Boknam was left alone with her grief. She went to the fields and began to work. The other women were lounging around, talking and laughing, completely ignoring Boknam. They didn't even bother to offer her a drink, but Boknam didn't care. She was on a mission. She worked tirelessly, digging up potatoes and carrying them to a huge pile. She did all the work by herself, work that was meant for 2 or 3 people. She wanted to finish as soon as she could so she could go back to her daughter's grave to mourn. Her patience, her kindness, and her passivity were gone. A new Boknam was born that day. The blazing afternoon sun beat down on Boknam as she toiled alone in the field, a singular figure against a backdrop of endless suffering. Her body was soaked in sweat, and her hands were raw. In a surreal moment of clarity, she looked at the mountain of potatoes she had harvested by herself and understood the awful truth. Her life had been a living hell. She walked away from her work and went to the group of women who had been gossiping and laughing all day. She took a bottle of water, her back to the women. They looked at her, confused and nervous. Boknam then said, as if talking to a friend, that she had spoken with the sun and it had told her that she was finally free. The women erupted in laughter, telling her that the heat had finally driven her mad, but they were all wrong. Boknam's rage was a cold, calculated fury. She picked up her sickle and, with a terrifying swiftness, killed every single woman in the field. After the carnage, a terrifying silence fell over the island, broken only by the sound of the ocean. A short while later, Dong-ho, the mean aunt, returned to the field and was horrified to see the bloodbath. She let out a piercing scream, dropped her food, and ran into the forest, where she hid for the entire night, a trembling mess of fear and terror. The next morning, Haiwan was getting ready to leave. She looked at her phone, but there was no signal. She went to find a signal, but she was met with a chilling sight. Boknam was standing over the old mute man, methodically shaving his head with a razor. It was an act of cold, detached finality. Haiwan followed the phone lines and realized that Boknam had cut them, completely isolating the island from the outside world. As she turned to run, she was met with the horrifying sight of a terrified Dong-ho coming out of the forest. The mean aunt was shaking with fear. She said that Boknam had lost her mind. Soon, Boknam, now completely possessed by a cold rage, came after Dong-ho with a sharpened sickle. The chase was a cruel game of cat and mouse. Boknam was walking, and Dong-ho was running for her life. Boknam caught up with her at a cliff. Dong-ho, seeing her life flashing before her eyes, pleaded for forgiveness. Bok-nam, without a word, cornered her, and in the final act of fear, the mean aunt saw a boat carrying Man-jong coming and said he would make Bok-nam pay for what she had done. She then said that she had been swimming in the ocean for decades, hinting that she wasn't afraid of jumping to save her life. But it was one thing that led to her death. She didn't jump far enough to hit the water. She landed on the rocks, killing her instantly. The carnage was not over. As Bok-nam was walking away, she ran into Chul-jong, who, not knowing what she had done, tried to assault her again. Bok-nam responded by brutally murdering him. Hae-won, who had been watching, ran away in fear, and Bok-nam pursued her. Meanwhile, Man-jong and the Sung got to shore, looking at the fields full of potatoes, and were wondering where everyone had gone. Man-jong and Sung stopped to rest where Chul-jong was killed by Bok-nam. As Sung used a dipper to scoop water from a bucket, a drop of blood fell into it. He looked up, and his blood ran cold. He saw Chul-jong's severed head there. Just as they were about to panic, Hae-won shouted, telling them Bok-nam was trying to attack them with a sickle in her hand. Bok-nam lunged, and Sung got his hand cut. Man-jong fought back and managed to kick Bok-nam. They captured Bok-nam, tied her up, and brought her back to the house. Man-jong stared at his wife with pure hatred in his eyes and began kicking her. He said that he regretted not killing her a long time ago. He told her that her only job as a wife was to respect him as the head of the household, the one job she never did. Bok-nam, without a shred of fear, looked him in the eye and told him that his eyes and heart were truly blind and that she was the one who had never been respected. She then added with a sickening smile that his small manhood would never satisfy her anyway. Man-jong's face went white. The public humiliation, especially in front of Hae-won, was a powerful kick in the teeth. He grabbed a knife and was about to stab Bok-nam, but Hae-won stopped him, saying that she would report him to the police if she did. Man-jong ignored her. He held the knife in front of Bok-nam's face, but Bok-nam, with a look of pure insanity, licked it, driving him into a sexual frenzy. She then took his finger and began to lick it like a wild animal. Man-jong was in a daze, completely mesmerized by her. Just as he was about to give in to her charm, she bit his finger. Then she took the knife her husband dropped with her mouth and stabbed him right in the chest. Sung suddenly showed up and saw what happened, but Hae-won, panic washed over her body, dragged him to the boat, while Bok-nam began to savagely attack her husband, stabbing him over and over again. She then got some of the peanut butter that he had given her and began to rub it on his wounds, an act of pure poetic justice. Meanwhile, Hae-won and Sung tried to start the boat, but it wouldn't start. Bok-nam had anticipated their escape and had tampered with the engine. Bok-nam ran toward the boat and brutally murdered Sung. Hae-won, seeing her chance, finally got the engine to start and left the island. As she drove away, Bok-nam looked on, a look of determination on her face. She would find her. The scene then shifts to the mainland. A few boat captains were playing cards when one of them received a call to pick someone up from the island. It was Bok-nam. She had finally gotten to the mainland wearing Hae-won's clothes and with her makeup on. She arrived at the port and saw Hae-won's boat being inspected by the police. She then overheard an officer say that Hae-won was in the port police station. As Hae-won was being interrogated by the officer, she was startled to see Bok-nam standing in the corner of the room. She was wearing a dress and makeup, holding a hammer. Hae-won ran, but Bok-nam calmly followed her, a look of pure madness on her face. The chase led Hae-won to find the officer lying, his own blood all over his body and face. Before she could react, Bok-nam appeared behind her, and she had locked the doors. The station, a place meant for safety and justice, had become a cage. Hae-won scrambled behind a set of iron bars and locked the padlock, but it was a futile gesture. Bok-nam, with a chillingly calm demeanor, took the keys from the officer's pocket. As she opened the cell door, her eyes fell upon a flute that was lying on a desk. It was a flute, a relic from a life they had left behind. Instead of killing her, Bok-nam asked Hae-won to play a song for her. Hae-won, with shaking hands, began to play. The haunting melody filled the room, a sad reminder of a time when their lives were filled with innocence. Bok-nam smiled as she listened, But suddenly, the officer, who turned out to be still alive, shot Boknam. She stumbled and fell to the ground. She was bleeding profusely from the wounds the officer had inflicted upon her. She then struggled to get her hammer and, with it, hit the officer so hard that he instantly died. She then made her way back to Haiwan, intending to end her friend's life too. But Haiwan, in a moment of pure terror, used the sharp edge of the flute to stab Boknam on the neck. Boknam fell onto the ground. In her final moments, her face was filled with a sense of peace she had never known. She asked Haiwan to play the flute again as she rested her head on her best friend's thigh. She died in the arms of the one person she had always loved and trusted, but betrayed her in her darkest hour.
They rage like fire, bright but blind, but I am water, I'm undefined. Their chaos falters and I remain, the gentle strength through all this pain. I speak in whispers the world can't hear, a language woven from pain and fear. Though they call me broken, I am whole, a silent hymn within my soul. I'll bloom like moss on the forest stone. In silence I am never alone. The wind will carry my voice someday, a quiet power that won't decay. So let them shout, let them throw their stones, for I am stronger where silence grows. A hidden song, a tender light, an echo of the quiet night.
In the end, Boknam did not get her happy ending. Her dream of a new life in the city had died with her, but her death was not in vain. The events that had unfolded on the island had changed Haiwan forever. She went to the police station and testified against the men who had assaulted the woman at the beginning of the film. She came clean and turned the men into the police and then went home. With a heavy heart, she opened and read all of Boknam's letters. She finally understood the scope of her friend's suffering and her own complicity. Her apathy was gone, replaced by a deep, gnawing regret. She realized that Boknam had not asked for money or gifts. She had asked for something much more valuable, a little kindness and human decency. In her own way, Haiwan's life had been forever changed, a testament to the fact that even in the face of unspeakable evil, a glimmer of humanity can still survive.